Welcome to Tech Blueprint, a window that lets you know the latest technology news in the world. Last night, CCTV Channel 13 broadcast a news report specifically about China's self-controllable chips. It said that China can now independently complete a complete set of computer operating systems from system kernel to application ecology, which is really glorious, and no longer constrained by others. More importantly, CCTV also specifically mentioned a computer, which is equipped with the Kirin X90 chip with 5-nanometer technology developed by China itself, and it is seamless and perfectly matched with the Hongmeng system. This means that China's domestic processors have achieved a complete closed loop in ecological adaptation for the first time. CCTV said the word 5 nanometers, but it was not a casual remark. Many people think that this is actually an official voice, officially announcing the news. However, self-controllable does not mean that everything must be 100% domestically produced, nor does it mean that Chinese things must not be imported at all. That is to say, we have to be smart and flexibly use global resources and supply chains to ultimately achieve the goal of China mastering key technologies. This time, the 5-nanometer chip was made based on China's domestic chip technology and resources gathered from all over the world. With a little thought, this goal was finally achieved. As long as the core technology is in our own hands, the final effect is not much different from complete self-sufficiency. Looking back at history, since 1996, the United States has led a thing called the Wassenaar Arrangement, which specifically imposes a technological blockade on China. Since then, China's chip industry has been struggling to survive and develop in a difficult environment. In 2018, the United States increased restrictions on chip exports to China. At this time, the Kirin chip launched by Huawei's HiSilicon company has become the ice-breaking pioneer in China's technology industry. In 2019, Huawei actually launched a 5-nanometer Kirin chip, which was a full half a year earlier than Apple's A14 chip. However, the United States immediately started to play tricks again. They restricted the cooperation of chip foundries and blocked China's way to buy advanced lithography machines. They really wanted to kill China's chip industry. However, the US's suppression has instead inspired China to work harder to innovate and break through. According to data forecasts, by 2027, China's mature chip market share may reach 39%, and a complete chip industry chain from raw materials to packaging will be formed. At present, in the field of mid- and low-end chips, China has long been able to be independent and self-sufficient, and no longer relies on the outside. In terms of high-end chips, companies like Huawei's Ascend and Cambrian are also making continuous progress in their artificial intelligence chips. As foreign media have mentioned, the more restrictions the United States imposes, the stronger China will become. The US strategy towards China in the chip industry is really brilliant, and it is an all-round containment and suppression of Chinese companies. Therefore, China must take an independent and controllable development path. Don't expect compromise and concession to solve the problem, which will only make the United States more rampant. On December 2, 2024, the United States took action again and announced a control list of more than 200 pages, specifically targeting 136 Chinese companies and 4 overseas subsidiaries of Chinese companies. This sanction is not surprising. Over the years, the United States has imposed countless rounds of sanctions on China's semiconductor industry. From the content point of view, this time the US restrictions are mainly aimed at the production equipment of artificial intelligence chips and some key raw materials, such as high-bandwidth memory, HBM, and 24-chip manufacturing tools, which are obviously aimed at the key part of China's development in artificial intelligence computing capabilities. Faced with such a situation, Chinese companies did not panic. Instead, They were as stable as old dogs in the stock market, and export orders rose against the trend. It was really not easy. It must be said that from January to October 2024, the total export volume of China's semiconductors was 931.17 billion yuan, which was 21.4% higher than the same period last year. Almost 93 billion yuan of exports can be achieved every month, which is really amazing. The United States has been blocking technology for 5 years and found an unusual side effect. That is, the more it suppresses China's technological progress, the more it encourages the independent development of China's own industrial chain. It's really surprising. Orders from many emerging markets have flocked to China, resulting in a huge external demand support network. On May 22, the U.S. Consumer News and Business Channel published an article mentioning the views of NVIDIA CEO Huang Renxuan. He thinks that the chip restrictions introduced by the United States in order to contain China's development in artificial intelligence are actually not worth the loss. This not only brings greater harm to American companies, but also accelerates the progress of competitors like China, which really narrows the gap with the United States in the field of artificial intelligence. The article mentioned that it is not easy to surpass top companies like NVIDIA. At present, Chinese competitors are still several years behind in high-end technology. However, many experts and industry insiders have warned that the U.S. export restrictions have prompted Chinese companies to speed up their pace of catching up and are rapidly narrowing the technological gap with the United States. Huang Renxuan bluntly stated that the United States wants to prevent other countries from obtaining American technology by restricting the spread of artificial intelligence technology. This idea is fundamentally wrong. If American companies do not fight in the Chinese market, China's technology will develop rapidly and eventually spread to the world. 4 years ago, NVIDIA's market share in China was as high as 95%, which is really the leader. But now, this proportion has dropped to 50%, and the remaining market share has been taken away by Chinese local companies. Moreover, this 50% market share is also supported by NVIDIA's painstaking efforts to bypass the US government's export restrictions and tailor-make products for Chinese customers. Today, China has bluntly said no to the US chip ban, which shows that China is no longer afraid of being choked by others in chip technology. At this point, the US's containment and suppression tactics are actually not very effective.